Hello, this is Mark. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I wanted to show you my experience with my Canon R10. This is something that I recently purchased off eBay because my original video equipment, which was a Samsung Ultra S22 on a Hohem gimbal, it worked very well. It's better for when I'm walking and trying to show the general area that I'm in. However, in order to get into more detail, I needed something that could take much finer pictures. And also with the fact that you can change lenses, so that gives me a wide or telephoto option. So some of the things that I ran into with this build turned out to be some kind of like a domino effect. The reason I say that is when I bought my first frame. Now this frame mimics the small rig Black Mamba, but apparently you can't buy that one anymore. Small rig doesn't make it. This particular frame worked very well on the camera, and I highly recommend this on eBay. It's like $90. It anchors in 3 points. Of course, the hole on the bottom, and then the 2 anchor points here go into the wrist straps. So it gives you 3 points of anchoring the camera to the frame. There was one thing about this frame that eventually turned out to be a problem, and it has to do with this left side. So I'll elaborate on that a little bit later on. So what I ended up going with is a focus photo frame. It's not a bad frame. I like it. It gets the job done. There's a couple little quirks about it, but I'm finding that some of these quirks are something I've agreed to live with, because there's one thing about this frame that I needed in order to complete the build of my rig. One of the first things I found when I bought this camera is it came with the kit lens, the 18-45, and it was okay for maybe a week or so, but then I looked at other RF glass and thought, wow, so expensive. And the L series, the luxury series, was definitely way out there. So again, back to YouTube I go, and what I learned is that there's an adapter that you can put on this R series camera that allows you to put EF and EF-S version lenses. So I want to show you that first. Okay. Now, this is from Mikey, and what this is pretty typical overall RF to EF adapter. Now, the one nice thing about it is it does have a nice weather sealing gasket, and it's all metal except for, of course, the body itself. But the biggest advantage about this particular adapter is that you can change the filter. Now this is a 9-stop variable ND filter. I also have a CPL filter and a clear filter. Most of the time I have the CPL filter in, but if I'm inside doing any kind of recording, I'll put the clear one back in. But this is the thing that sparked the whole issue about having to look for a new frame. Now, when you go to put this on, I love that click. When you go to put this on, the biggest difference between the two frames is on this one, the side of the frame sticks out, which is actually a plus, because the ports on the side of the camera are right about here. So it would make sense that they would want to extend this forward a little bit so it doesn't impact your placement of your cables. However, because of that, it restricted your access on this side of the camera. Even trying to get my fingers in to push the lens release on the body of the camera, a lot of times I had to find something like a long Allen wrench in order to reach down to be able to get to that button. So what happened with this frame is, in order for me to change the filter, I had to remove the lens first, because I couldn't get all the way to here to remove the entire thing as one piece. So I had to remove the lens, then I had to remove the adapter, change the filter, then I could put the adapter on the lens, and then put the whole thing back as one movement, knowing that the next time I needed to change my filter, I wouldn't be able to slide this out. So with this frame, I'm able to access this without any problem. Even fully built, I can still change this out. Now, other than that, the only gripe that I have about this frame is there's only one point to anchor the frame to the camera, and this one and only anchor point is at the bottom of the camera. I don't know why cameras don't come with more than one, because you really do need two, because any flexing that goes on with the frame is going to impact the tightness of this screw here, and it will come loose. Eventually it will come loose. So you're finding yourself dismantling the camera in order to check this screw. Now, the other thing I want to touch on has nothing to do with the frame, but while we're looking at the bottom of the camera, I want to address the battery door. I don't know why Canon decided on this particular model, and maybe others, I'm not sure. But I know from watching other YouTube videos that other cameras, that when you release the latch, the door pops open. There's a spring inside. No, not on this one. So you have to use a fingernail to open it up. Okay, now you have access to the battery door and the battery compartment and the SD card compartment. Now, the issue that I ran into in either frame was the same. There is a little hole on the side of the camera body. Right here is a little rubber door. Now, you can't tell on this video, but this frame, even the other frame, covers half that door. So when the cable comes out, say for example this one, you'll notice this cable's pretty thick. It's actually thicker than the amount of space left for this door because of the frame. So you have to remove the camera from the frame, put the battery in, get it through the side door, and then you'll find it's rather difficult to try to get this all back together because this cable is being pinched by the frame. So it never really sits nice and square like it is right now, nice and flush. So I thought, well, I got to do something about that. So what I found was, on this door, I'll show a close-up, there is a well that is built into the bottom of this door. And it looks like the reason for that well was maybe someone was thinking, well, if we don't put plastic in that well, then that makes a really convenient little opening right here for, guess what? The cable. So now the cable comes out the bottom of the camera. I really hated to have to drill into that, but I know I can replace the door if anything ever happens. Now, the other thing about this camera, there's a tiny little post on the very end of this door that is right next to where you have to drill the hole. This little post pushes a micro switch down that tells the camera that the door is closed and latched. If for whatever reason something happens to that pin or something to that switch, your camera won't come on. You have no camera. So by doing this, I'm able to close the door and the camera will come on. Now, in the case of a Canon battery, I know there's a battery here somewhere. There's a lot of stuff here. Anyway, oh, no, that's not it. I know I have a Canon battery here somewhere. Well, that brings me to the next thing. I have this little charger that when you push the button, it tells you the charge rate of the batteries inside. And then there's a USB-C charging port on the side. So that's where I keep my batteries. So when I go to put this battery in, it goes right in. And one thing I want to show you on this camera, on the back here, there's this tiny little LED right here that when you close the door and then latch it, watch right here, you get a red LED that flashes on briefly. That tells the camera that it has power and the door is closed and latched. So if you have a problem with your camera coming on, I would start there. There's something up with that micro switch. So in the meantime, I'm going to take this battery out because I won't be using it. Okay, put it back in its charger. Close the door. Okay, let's move on to actually building the rig. Okay, now one of the other things I ran into is I needed a handle on the left side here. And one of the struggles that I came up with using different handles is that the proximity of these holes and this port on the side of the camera was very close. And a lot of the handles that I would mount would encroach on this space and actually kind of push down or even worse, push the cables to the right. And that would impact the internal wiring inside this camera. And let me tell you, if you damage anything inside the camera, you're probably going to buy another camera, because I would imagine that would be very expensive to replace. But in any event, after a lot of research and figuring out what I might want to do to answer this question, I came up with these 1/4 20 spacers or standoffs. So it's a 1/4 20 hole, it's a 1/4 20 thread, and the standoff gives me 5/8 of an inch space between the frame and the handle. So I'll put that one in there. And put this one in here. Okay. So those are in securely. Now, one thing I did also find is that these screws protrude significantly through the frame and very, very gently push on the front of the camera. So it actually adds rigidity to the camera, because now this frame can't flex because these screw posts are keeping the camera from moving. So that turned out to be a great advantage. So in order to mount the handle that I have finally chosen, I need a NATO rail to attach it to. So I have this small rig NATO rail here. This is a low profile one. So, I looked at this originally when I bought it, and I thought, well, I'll just put it on the side of the on the frame here. Well, guess what? This is just wide enough that it pushes on the cables. And that's what warranted me to find an option to extend the distance of this 1/4 20 hole. So I came up with this NATO rail, and one thing while I'm discussing this is I'm going to rant a little bit. Whoever came up with the idea that these screws had to be captured so that they don't fall out. I think you really need to rethink the process, because if this slot was larger, you would be able to align this to where you need it, and then you would be able to see the hole that this screw is going to go into, and you just simply take a screw and you put it in. But you'll find I've got a myriad of screws here. I bought a cheese plate just to keep a handle on all these. So they want you to buy screws with this color. So there's no threads in it. So the intent is that you thread it in, and then once it goes down so far into the hole, you can now slide this along the length of the plate. And that's a real pain in the butt, because you can't just put these screws in where you want. Now, what I did early on was I took a plate, this one right here, and I made the slot wider. I took a drill bit and I just kept reaming this slot. So now I can put a screw in anywhere I want on this plate. Now, to show you why this is kind of a problem, the way they have this designed, is in order for me to line these two screws up with these two holes, you have to get them above the holes that you want to start with. You can't see them from the top. Then you can only get it started. You can't go too far, because then you'll realize that you're actually jamming the other screw, because that shoulder is only so long. So anyway, I'm going to put this in here. By the way, do yourself a favor, get one of these that's straight and has a 1/4 It's a lot easier to get stuff started. And then I found this bigger one here for cranking things down. Okay, now take my handle upside down. I can take my handle, put it on this NATO rail, slide it to where it's on the table, and then tighten the clamp. Okay, now I have a very secure way of sitting the camera down, and this arrangement here brings the handle out far enough that when I go to add other things as we move on, it needed to be out this far, because you would think, well, geez, the handle should be way inside here. Well, you'll find that if you go to add other things, this handle, being rather large, gets in the way. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put the top handle on. This top handle, again, by Small Rig, can be mounted in two ways. Now, again, different products that I've chosen have forced me to reorient some things, because originally I had the handle on this way. However, I ran into a problem. So I'm going to put this on this way, and then I'll show you where the problem came in. So we'll get this going here. Take my nice big Allen wrench and get that in there a little bit of a time. So as time went on, I knew that I wanted to go with an external battery solution. So this is an NPF battery, and it's from Newer, and this is the 970. So in order to use one of these, you need a battery plate. Now, I've chosen to go with this one from Tilta, because it gives me quite a few different output ports that I actually use every one of them. The downside to this particular model is these locating pins are fixed into the body. they don't move. They're not spring-loaded. You can't remove them. They're permanent. So if you needed to put this somewhere that doesn't have the locating pins, well, I guess you'd have to saw the pins off. Well, I decided not to go quite that far, so I mount this right here on the handle. Now you'll notice that is why my handle is now backwards for all intent purposes, because I want the battery on the back. Okay, now the next thing to add is the base plate. Now that one also took me a while to figure out. Okay, now I want to show you this complicated looking assembly here. I have a tripod. It's a fluid head tripod. So having Arca Swiss built into really anything is an advantage. Now, the one biggest problem that I saw, and to this day I just don't understand, but yes, that's Arca Swiss. And if you have a say for example, a ball head, great little tripod, you'll notice that the camera has to come in from the side. Okay, that works great. You clamp it down. This tripod works absolutely perfect with it. But when you have a fluid head, it has to go on this way. Well, you need to be able to take the Arca Swiss direction here and somehow turn it in order to work with a fluid head. So what I've come up with is this arrangement. Now, this is from Shure. This is an Arca Swiss plate that lets you clamp the plate, lets you clamp the bottom of the camera onto this. Now this connects to a small rig base plate that gives me my 15 millimeter rods. So in order to put the camera on this plate, you simply start it in the back, click it forward. Then you adjust side to side where you want the camera. Then you clamp it down. Okay, now when I put this on my fluid head, you'll notice this plate on the bottom here is oriented in the correct direction. And the other reason that I went with this plate is that I can put this on the fluid head or any tripod anyway, and adjust where the center of gravity is for this camera. Okay, so let's continue building this thing. So one of the other things I learned early on is that the display on the back of this camera, it's okay. It gives me all the information I need. However, primarily when I'm using this in video mode as a cinema camera, I have the camera oriented pretty much like this, so the display is just not accessible. So what I decided to do is I have this Viltrox DCX2 6-inch monitor. Now, in order to mount this, originally I had it mounted on the front with your traditional monitor mount and all that stuff. But again, with me, I'm thinking, well, what if I'm going to be doing a recording much like I'm doing today, but with this camera? I'd really like to be able to see this monitor from my seated position. So I did see a video where someone had put the monitor on the side, and I thought, wow, that's a great idea. So what I came up with was I had to go out and buy a 1/4 20 threaded shaft. So this right here is nothing more than just if I can get it out of here, 1/4 shaft. Okay, so this 1/4 shaft easily connects right here on the handle. Now, I also bought a bag of these nuts, I guess you might call them, that have finger grooves in them so you can really get them cranked down. So this one, when tightened, holds it to the handle. This one, when tightened in the opposite direction, let me see if I can get this off here. Okay, I'm just going to take this off just to show you. This is a small rig hawk lock. This convenient little thing here allows me to put the monitor on and, more importantly, twist it or remove it as often as I care to. So I'm going to put this back on. I have this oriented that the releasing arm is facing down like this. Okay, so I get this one tightened in that direction. I get this one tightened in this direction. Now I can take the monitor and connect it right onto the rig. Now, the other thing I came up with, and the other reason why I wanted to put it on the side, is if I'm doing a recording, much like, again, like I'm doing today, I want to be able to turn this monitor in this direction. Now, this monitor has I guess a gyro or a gimbal or something inside that tells it that it's upside down. So the display will flip. So when I'm looking at it from this direction, it's oriented correctly. And then when I spin it back in this direction, it reorients itself. So another addition that I eventually came up with was, again, small rig, has this phone mount. Now, this phone mount, I mount on the front, just like here. And that allows me to put actually my same S22 in this mount, and through Wi-Fi controls the camera. So I actually would have two monitors to look at. The phone acts as my interaction monitor, so I can make changes much like I would have to do on the camera's display. However, I could make it up here on the phone. And the other advantage that this small rig phone holder gives me is I have another place to mount something. It's got a small rig 1/4 cold shoe mounted right on the bottom of that. I added that. So now I can add, this is the remote control for the camera. It's like a remote shutter release. And when I tighten this down, okay, so now when I tighten it down, it stays on the front of the camera, and this will connect to the port on the side of the camera that allows me to operate the shutter button. And this is the remote, the handheld remote that comes with it. I added a hand strap because there's really no other way to hold on to this remote, and I really don't want to lose it. So when I added the hand strap, that makes it very easy. And I added Velcro on the back so that I could sit this right there so I won't lose it. Now, for the time being, I'm going to remove this because it makes it kind of forward heavy. Now, another thing I had to come up with, and this kind of completes the trifecta for the ports here, is I needed a way to have a microphone connected. So I went with the shotgun microphone, but it sat like right here. However, this monitor is pretty noisy when the fan comes on. So that kind of eliminated any chance that I could be able to use a shotgun microphone. So having a Hohem gimbal, Hohem also makes a remote microphone, a wireless microphone. And this is a receiver. So what I've done is I've taken this receiver, and throughout the different connections on this camera, I've come up with these magnetic connectors that allow me to mount a USB-C device on one side, and this pin here, this small tiny pin, sits inside the USB connection, so that when I want to use this microphone, it connects. Now, the biggest reason that I use these quick disconnects is because this particular port is also used to charge the battery. And as you can see, the battery runs everything on this camera. So when I'm not recording, I connect a charger to this port, and this just basically hangs. So what I do to make this work on the camera is, let's get the wiring going here. So this receiver has an audio jack. Okay, and that connects just like this. Now this cable is going to run down to the audio, or to the microphone port on the camera. Now the remote requires this 3.5 millimeter to 2.5 millimeter connection. And again, for versatility, on the 3.5 side, I have a right-angled adapter that will plug into the actual remote. I'll connect that last. So now we connect this into the camera. So now the microphone and the remote are connected. We have the, now let me turn this a little bit here. Then we have the USB port left, and then we have the very delicate micro HDMI. Yeah, you got to be really careful with this because it can get damaged very easily. And it's a little tough to see the port because everything on this side is so small. Yeah, it just goes right in the hole. Okay. So now my audio, my microphone, HDMI, and remote trigger are connected. I'm going to put this camera on the side here. It's like this. Now you're not going to be able to see this, but cable management has also become quite an art. So I've come up with, this is a cold shoe adapter that allows me to take a small rig wire clamp with a 1/4-20 screw in it. It allows me to mount it up here I'll show you this in a minute here, as soon as I can figure out how to get it to go in there. I'm doing something wrong here. There we go. This black on black is really tough. Okay, let me get this wound down here, and I'll show you where this goes. Okay. Okay, now on this side, we've got this clamp, And we've got our wires coming up. Okay, there's that one. This is actually quite hard to do from this angle, so bear with me. Okay, that was a little easier. So I have this small rig cable clamp that now grabs these cables and holds them nice and steady because you don't want any tugging to happen on this side here. So I'm not going to go through the fine details of wire management, but just want to show you where these wires ultimately go. So that's for the HDMI. And one other thing I had to come up with, as usual, lay this down again. This is a 90-degree HDMI adapter. So when you run the cable out to the monitor, you want the cable to come up from the bottom and go into the side of the monitor. You don't want it to be hanging way out here because you're going to catch it on something. So I came up with this right-angled adapter. Now, as far as the remote is concerned, this wire has a mind of its own. It never goes where I want it to. I don't understand how it does it. But in any event, this comes around, and I'll wrap it around a little bit later on. But that, I swear this cable is alive. That comes up into here again at a right angle. So this actually gets dressed back. And I'll deal with this long cable a little bit later. So then the next cable that we'll talk about, this is a 12-volt cable, and on each end is a 5.5 by 2.5 millimeter plug. Now, the 12-volt, first of all, I want to show you, the 12-volt will plug into the 8-volt port. However, it won't be enough to power the monitor. But it's safer because whatever you would plug into this wants 12, and this is only going to give it at most 8. So it's a safety factor that works out pretty good. For the 12-volt adapter, okay, 12-volt goes in there. And again, I'll run it through that cable clamp. But this is going to run up and connect into the bottom of the monitor. Okay, now the battery, the power for the camera, we can run this one of two ways. Now, I have chosen to use a dummy battery because for all intent and purposes, when I'm doing some long videos or a lot of photos, I want something that's going to last for hours and hours. So I rely on this NPF battery. Okay, so in order to power the camera, we need to put in the dummy battery. Okay, so dummy battery goes in like this. Put it in, and we're able to close the door. Okay, now this does take a little bit of wire origami, as it were, but eventually this is going to make its way up to this 8-volt output. I'm just going to dress this around the front here a little bit. I'll show you the finished product of this thing later on. But so now it plugs into the 8.4 volt. So now when I put this battery on, I want to show you. A little red light just came on. On the bottom of this are 4 LEDs showing you the strength of the battery. So right now all 4 of them are illuminated. So now the camera can come on. So the camera can come on. There's no lens on it, so it's not going to show you anything. And push this for 3 seconds. Display goes out. And the monitor comes on. Again, there's no lens on this, so the monitor is really not going to show you anything more than the display was showing you. So that is how I power up this rig. And I get probably about 4 hours. And the beauty of this is when I need to change this battery, I just simply turn everything off, remove the battery, and replace it with a fresh one. Okay, so I'm not really sure how well this is going to work out, but so I have it on this tripod, so I'm able to spin this around. So just to give you the whole effect here, let's put the battery in. Okay, turn the camera on, turn the monitor on. Okay. And we'll take the lens cap off. So let me give you the whole tour. So I came up with some more of these small rig clamps. So as you can see now, this cable comes up around the side. Really nice. As a matter of fact, I can shove it down into this well. So this cable clamp holds onto that. And here's the remote receiver. So this is the 10-18 lens, and the zoom ring is pretty close to the body. It doesn't move very far. And then of course you have the focus ring, which is on the outside. And on this particular lens, that focus ring moves very, very easily. Anyway, in order to adjust my zoom, it became apparent that reaching around to the front, doing it the way you would typically do it handheld, just wasn't going to work for me. I came up with this small rig. They call it a follow focus, but I generally use it for controlling the zoom. So that is going to be added onto my plate here. Oh, well, you can be able to watch me do this, but this slides into here. Loosen this, get these lined up. Okay, and then tighten that down. Now I do have some longer rods coming. The only ones that I have right now is the one that came with this small rig follow focus. So the way this works is you can see the follow focus gear meshes with these rubber rings that I've placed around my lenses. So this rubber ring is on the zoom ring, and then there's one out here on the focus ring. So when I'm operating this camera, I can rest my hand underneath the left hand grip, and I have access to this wheel. So I can control this wheel from this side. It's a little awkward in this position. So typically it would be like this. Zoom in, zoom out. Very, very easily operated. Now, this really comes into play when you've got a really long lens. I'm not going to put it on the camera, but suffice to say, when you put the sun hood on this, that's a pretty long lens. So you figure that's going to mount like this. So its zoom ring is out here. Now, because this is an older lens, I guess, in order to turn, the zoom ring takes a little bit more strength. It's a little bit more friction involved. So what I've done is I've added this. It's kind of like a universal ring control. It came with the small rig follow focus. It's got deeper gears, it seems. So when I put this on here, I am able to get this thing to go all the way from beginning 70 all the way up to 300. Okay, so that pretty much brings us to the conclusion that this is the rig that that I'm going to be running with. So having this very large remote monitor works out very, very well. And as you can see, if I'm doing something from the front, I can just simply flip it around, and then the display would flip around, so I can actually see what the camera is recording. So really appreciate it. I hope I've helped someone along the way to build their Canon R10. This has certainly been an experience. Thank you very much.